All right, Shalom. It's your brother Kushab coming back at you with another lesson. Now, before I get started, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak Wadash, and Daban to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who taught me this truth and rule well. Peace and blessings, salutations be to the hopefully elect, as well as those that believe in the gospel, and may you endure to the end, Lord willing. All right, and I just want to get into a lesson today. Something I was kind of supposed to do this last week, but Thawadi out by Shemal Shai, he put it back on my spirit, to go ahead and knock it out, right? Because it's very important for those who know, all right, and for those that don't, that you may know, all right, that when brothers are, go into these topics, all right, speaking of, something that may be controversial, all right, such as the Gentile topic. So something that may be controversial, such as the Gentiles, right? It's very important that you understand these things, because something that I was kind of just meditating on last week, which gave me the inspiration to name the title of the video, is because we are those Gentiles today, right? Why do you think that the Lord allowed Yahweh Shai to become a sacrifice in order for those who didn't know, all right? Those who kept the customs of the Greeks, all right? Those who kept the customs of the heathen nations, all right? Because we all, okay, and literally all of us today, before we came in this truth, we kept the customs of the heathen. You see, so if the Gentiles, all right, which are the Israelite foreigners, weren't accepted, all right, back then, why in the hell would they be accepted now? You see, seeing that, the state that we're in, all right, which is far off more worse than we've ever been in, right? So in the book of 1 Corinthians, right, chapter 12, verse 1, all right, it says, "Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles," you see, "carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led," right? So we were, okay, before the Lord called us into this ministry, all right, before the Lord anointed us and gave us the Rechak Wadash to know, all right, we were Gentiles, man, all right, as in it applied back then, but it applies much more today, you see, because that's all our people. God damn, it's about to come down. Salaki, but our people love the ways of the heathen as well, and back then Jake did what? They went, a whoring after the other nations, man, wanting to be like the other nations, you see? And they're doing it again. All right, but it's very, very important, all right, very controversial that you understand that we were, okay, those Gentiles, all right? A majority of our people, 2/3 of our people are still Gentiles, man. You see? And when I say Gentiles, I'm speaking of following those ways, right? Following the ways of the heathen, right? Because we know this word Gentile applies to who? Israelite foreigners, okay? Right? It says a multitude associated with living together. That's not a tribe, a nation, of people, or a group. Right? It's not the exact one I wanted. I think it's 14. Is it 86 maybe? Oh. Yeah, I know I'm gonna get it down the line. It's all good. But let's see where we're gonna go from here. We're gonna go to Galatians chapter 2. All right. Now I've got a couple bookmarks, so just bear with me, Lord willing. Ephesians 2, I'm tripping. That's thinking about Galatians 3. All right, so this Ephesians chapter 2, verse 11, it says, "Wherefore remember that ye being Gentiles in the times past," Salaki, that being in the times past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called the uncircumcision, right? And there was a whole, big deal back then, because you had Jews, all right, Israelites that kept the laws from birth, right? And you also had those who were coming in, all right, who believed, but they haven't kept the laws from birth, which was called the uncircumcision, right? It says, by that which is called circumcision in the flesh made by hands, right? So, they was like, you have IUIC today, who boast in the laws, the statutes and commandments, in which they don't even keep all the laws, statutes and commandments, but this would be their mind frame, all right, their mindset back then, okay? They will fall under those other circumcision, quote unquote, okay? Saying that you have to do what? Fulfill the law, all right? And it's not really about Yahushua, you see? And that's why the Lord ultimately made it about Yahushua, all right? Now it says, verse 12, that at the time ye were without Hamashiach, being aliens, okay, from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without our power in the world. You see, so the times where we were out without Yahushua, all right, which the bulk of our people are still without Yahushua, right? But before we were called into the truth, all right, before we knew of the truth, okay, we were without Hamashiach, right? Being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, right? Which this word commonwealth, it goes into our citizenship, right? Being a citizen. So naturally, all right, we are citizens of Israel, okay? Yes, we are citizens of Israel, not America, right? Not Canada, not Europe, right? Not Mexico. No, we are aliens, all right? Strangers. You see, because that's all the word alien means is to be a stranger, right? So we are strangers, all right? From where? From Israel, man. You see, that's where we from, all right? We're not from Africa either. You see? Verse 13, it says, but now in Hamashiach Yahushua, ye who sometimes were far off are made nigh by the blood of Hamashiach Yahushua. So that's how we're made closer, all right, and brought closer to the Heavenly Father through the sacrifice of Yahushua, right? Not by the law, all right? Not by the law, but through the sacrifice of Yahushua, right? His blood, man. You see? I tell you in that in 1 Peter 1 and 18, Verse 14, it says, for he is our peace, who had made both one and had broken down the middle wall of partition between us. All right, which is speaking of the middle wall of partition. All right, speaking of being a wall between us and the Most High, right? So Yahushua was the one that broke down that wall by making that sacrifice, right? By going on the cross for us, man. You see, for the elect, okay? But it says, when you read in the NLT, it says, for Christ himself has brought peace unto us. He united the Jews and the Gentiles, right? And this is speaking of Greek-speaking Jews, man. All right? Jews that spoke Greek, that kept the customs of the Greek, all right? But through the search of their fathers, okay, they were Israelites. You see? It says, into one people, when in his own body, on the cross, he broke down the wall of hostility that separated us, right? Which that brings the circumcision and the uncircumcision together. You see? Verse 15, it says, he abolished his flesh in the enmity, even the law of commandments contained in ordinances, for to make in himself of twain on one new man, so making peace. I believe that was the point, right? So I'm gonna jump to I want to get Romans. I think it's Romans 2. I hope you can hear me, man. It's a lot of this rain's coming out of nowhere. That's about 26. Right, 25, right? Romans 2 and 25. So their mindset, they was proud, all right, pridefully keeping the law. You see, and this is after Yahushua came and walked the earth. You see, which is why he spoke in those red letters. You know, he ain't sent but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? Because there were Jews, okay, when Yahushua walked the earth, that was still keeping the law, statutes, and the commandments, man. All right. Matter of fact, let's go there. Second Maccabees chapter 7, all right, verse 30. Yep. While she was just speaking, right? We all know what this chapter goes into, right? If you don't know what Second Maccabees, the 7th chapter is about, well, you need to go read it. All right. Now it says, while she was just speaking these words, the young man said, "Whom wait ye for? I will not obey the king's commandment, but I will obey the commandment of the law that was given unto our fathers by Moses." You see, and I brought this out to show this was the mindset of those who were of the circumcision. You see, and this was, you know, going into the history, all right, when Jake was being Hellenized, man, all right, when it wasn't lawful, all right, to keep the Sabbath day. You know, you had I believe it was 2 women that was put to death, you know. I think I bookmarked it. Yep, Second Maccabees 6, you know. Second Maccabees 6. And I'm going to just get the point, all right. 6 and 6, it says, "Neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days." You see, so you couldn't, it was against, all right, I believe it was Antiochus Epiphanes at that time, all right, who this devil, he put Jake through goddamn hell, man. You see, it says Sabbath days or the ancient fast, right, the day of atonement, right, Passover. He didn't want the Feast of Tabernacles, right, Feast of Unleavened Bread. He didn't want he didn't want Jake practicing none of the things that they wanted to do or that they should do, all right, because it was a custom through our fathers, man. But he wanted Jake to just be full of partying and bullshit, doing profane things. You see, it says, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. So he didn't even want you to say what your true nationality was. You see, so this is why you had strife between the circumcision and the uncircumcision. You know, because on one side you had those that was ready to die, all right, and was dying behind what they believe in, man, all right. And on the other hand, you had Jake that was just kind of voluntarily just giving themselves over to what Antiochus want, all right. Didn't have any integrity, all right. And once they seen people getting put to death, they just went willingly. You see, it says, I wanted to get it with the 2 women. Yep, it's I'm gonna just jump down to verse 8 and read down. It says, "Moreover, there went out a decree to the neighbor cities of the heathen by the suggestion of Ptolemy against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifices." So the heathen, all right, which they were Edomites, all right, Greek Edomites, all right, was rulers of these different provinces, come from under Alexander the Great, right? Which Ptolemy, he ruled around the region of Egypt, all right. Now it says, and whoso would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to death. You see, then might a man have seen the present misery, in which they was doing to us when they took us from the western coast of Africa, all right, putting us on those cargo slave ships. All right, you know, you got that whole account with the movie. I forget the name of it. Roots, right? When they was, you know, basically beating the name out of Jake, man. You know, the guy will whoop him. And he say, "What's your name?" And he'll say, you know, a different name, right? Which is likened unto us having, you know, look at it with a spiritual lens, us having those Hebrew names, all right? Us knowing who we are. But he said, "No, boy, your name is Toby." And, you know, he kept whipping him until he confessed that, all right, my name Toby. You see? Literally beat the nationality out of Jake, man. You know? In which they did this back then. You see? So this is what I'm tying all together, because if these people weren't accepted, all right, these Israelite foreigners weren't accepted back then it would be no possible way for us to be accepted in the eyes of the Heavenly Father today. You see? That's the importance of understanding and knowing, all right, what's going on, all right, in the history. You see? But it says, what was that? Verse 10. For there were 2 women brought who had circumcised their children, whom when they had openly led round about the city, the babes handling at their breasts, they cast them down headlong from the wall. And others that had run into caves nearby to keep the Sabbath day secretly, being discovered by Philip, were all burnt together, because they made a conscience, all right, to help themselves for the honor of the most sacred day. So Jake, you know, just trying to keep the laws, man. The law, statutes, commandments to the best of their ability, all right, and they were being put to death for it, right? They were being put to death for it, man. You had, you know, women breastfeeding their child, all right, and that wasn't lawful, man. You see? The same way today, why Jake is such at a lower state. Why? Because we've been Hellenized again, all right? We've been Hellenized again, you see, by the same people. Edomites, man. But go back to the Romans 2:26. Therefore, if the uncircumcision keep the righteousness of the law, shall not his uncircumcision be counted for circumcision? So, you know, basically saying, well, look, if you was to repent and just keep the law, you know, well, it's no point in calling you uncircumcised no more, because, you know, it's all about the law, basically, right? It says, verse 27, and shall not uncircumcision, which is by nature, all right, if it fulfilled thee, so like if it fulfilled the law, judge thee, who by the letter of the circumcision do it transgress the law. For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh, right? So keeping the laws, all right, yeah, we do keep the laws to the best, right? But it says, for he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, you see? But this is the point. It says, but he is a Jew, which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart. You see, your mind, your la'ab, okay? Having your, putting to death the old man, right? Mortifying your members, all right? It says, in the spirit, and not in a letter, whose praise is not of men, but of the Most High. So it's all about being a Jew inwardly, man. All right? We don't boast and brag about keeping the laws, statutes, and commandments. Yeah, we, like I said, you know, we try to the best of our ability, but we still go to work on the Sabbath, man, which is a sin punishable by death, man. You see? So no, we can't keep the laws, right? We're not justified by that, right? We're justified by having faith in Yahweh Shai, man. You know? But you see, I had a couple more, you know. I think I read that Galatians already. Oh yeah. This the hit. This the banger, right? There was Ephesians 2. I was getting them confused, right? This is Galatians chapter 2. Get in the see what they say in the NLT as well. I can start up 14. All right, it says, but when I saw that they walk not uprightly according to the truth of the gospel, I said unto Peter before them all, if thou being a Jew, in which you can read all the way up with this whole account. All right, I believe this when Paul kind of, he basically was calling Peter out for being two-faced, because he was going in eating with those that are uncircumcised, but when he saw people of the circumcision, he act like he didn't really know the Israelite foreigners, right? Which was hypocrisy, but let's get the point. I'm gonna just start at 15 and get the point. It says, who are Jews, we who are Jews by nature and not sinners of the Gentiles, right? So Paul speaking to Peter, because both of them was born, all right, of what you would call a circumcision, right? They kept the laws. All right, they were born, their families were of that stock that kept the law. You see, it says, knowing that a man, so even though we were born, all right, we were brought up this way to keep the law. All right, he's talking to Peter saying, look, that we both was born of the circumcision, basically, but that's not what you justified by, right? It says, knowing that a man is not justified by the works of the law, but by the faith of Yahushua HaMashiach. Even we have believed in Yahushua HaMashiach, that we might be justified by the faith of the anointed, and not by the works of the law. For by the works of the law shall no flesh be justified, man. You see? And that's the importance, all right, of Yahushua, of us being, in order to even have a chance to being saved, even calling on the names, the true names, man. That all comes through Yahushua. Understanding who we are. You see? The law couldn't do this for us, man. All right? Let me see what they say in the NLT. I'm going to let me finish it out, and then I end it off there. All right? It says, verse 17, but if, while we seek to be justified by Hamashiach, we ourselves are found sinners, you see? So those of the circumcision were still found to be sinners, man. All right? You can't keep the law perfectly, all right, in captivity, all right, let alone in captivity. And then you add the fact of fighting against the flesh, all right, fighting against these bodies, man. You see? You can't, it just can't happen. It won't happen, right? Which is why the Lord is going to just do away with these bodies. It says we ourselves also are found sinners. Is therefore Christ the minister of sin? Yahweh forbid. And that's the point, man. I can keep going, but I feel like the point has pretty much been made. So this is the importance, all right, of knowing the history of us being Gentiles, right? Because we are those people today, all right, those being justified through our faith in Yahushua, all right, and not through the works of the law, all right. But do we make void then the law? No, man. Yahweh forbid. I'm gonna end it off with that. Romans 3, I believe, is at the end. Damn. I'm gonna start at 28. It says, therefore we conclude that a man is justified by faith, right? We conclude, this is the conclusion. A man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law. Is he the power of the Jews only? Is he not also of the Gentiles, question mark? Yes, of the Gentiles also. Seeing it is one power which shall justify the circumcision by faith and the uncircumcision through faith. You see? So there's one power that's going to justify, all right, us all, man. Not just those that keep the law and not just those that are just finding out they're Israel. No, it says the Most High, yeah, through his son, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, all right, is going to justify everybody through faith, man. You see? And that's why faith is so important. It tells you in Hebrews 11 that without faith it's impossible to please the Most High. You know? It says, verse 31, but it all sums it up. Do we then make void the law through faith? The Most High forbid. Yeah, we establish the law. So we keep the laws, statutes, commandments to the best of our ability, man. All right? But knowing that's not what's going to get us saved. You see? As it didn't get us saved back then, you know? But when you go into the history and understand that this is very important to know and very important to understand, because without these controversial things that went on, all right, during the times of the first acts, all right, with these different councils and different things that went down, you wouldn't understand how that applies to us today, you know, in which we are those Israelites, all right, today, those Israelite foreigners, man, all right. Let me just look at one more thing, because I just wanted to get that. It's still 1484. I think it's 1483. You can go into the word Grecian. But, you know, it's all good. You know, so Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. All right, so with that, I'm going to give all praises, glory, infinite honors unto Yahweh. Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors once again to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. And peace and blessings, salutations be to the hopeful elect. Until next time, I say shalom.